I am Tarık Toros and welcome to this final edition of What's Happening in Turkey for 2024. This week we take a closer look at the year that was. What shaped Turkey in 2024? What were the major issues and what does this mean for 2025? Without a doubt, the economy dominated the agenda. An economy under pressure. Turkey faced immense economic struggles in 2024. Official inflation hovered around 50%, but independent reports showed far worse numbers. In daily life, prices for food, rent, and energy soared. Families spent most of their income on basic needs, and the middle class shrunk further. At the start of the year, the minimum wage was set at 17,000 Turkish liras, just under $500. For millions of workers, it was barely enough to survive. Housing costs in big cities turned into a crisis for low-income families. The counter of slowdown, Turkey deepened economic ties with Gulf nations. Mehmet Şimşek, the Minister of Treasury and Finance, worked tirelessly to attract Western investment. But as the year ends, inflation remains Turkey's biggest nightmare heading into 2025. The AKP's political setback. In March, Turkey held local elections. For the first time in years, the ruling AKP lost its place as the largest political party. The opposition CHP emerged victorious. This led to a surprising moment. President Erdogan visited the CHP headquarters for the first time in decades, seeking dialogue. However, the new CHP leadership avoided pushing for early elections. Instead, it chose to normalize relations with Erdogan. This angered many of its supporters. Meanwhile, Erdogan and the AKP recovered quickly. By the fall, the government returned to its authoritarian style of rule. The Kurdish question returns. In October, Devlet Bahçeli, leader of the MHP and Erdogan's coalition partner, made a surprising proposal. He raised the possibility of releasing PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan in prison for 25 years. In exchange, Öcalan vowed to declare the PKK dissolved. At the same time, the government returned to its controversial trustee policy, removing several elected Kurdish mayors in November. The government justified this by accusing the mayors of terrorism ties. These moves reignited debates about democracy and representation. Operations against the Gülen movement. 8.5 years after the failed coup attempt, the government continued its crackdown on the Gülen movement. On October 20, Fethullah Gülen passed away. Instead of slowing down, the Erdogan government ramped up operations. Trials continue against people accused of membership in a terrorist organization, often for reasons as minor as bank transfers or using certain messaging apps. Cross-border abductions also continued, with a notable case in Kenya where individuals with UN refugee status were kidnapped. The persecution of the Gülen movement remains controversial internationally, as it's not recognized as a terrorist group outside Turkey. These operations raise serious concerns about human rights and the rule of law. Judicial crisis and rule of law. Turkey's judicial independence has all but vanished. Decisions by the European Court of Human Rights are routinely ignored. Lower courts have even refused to comply with Turkey's own constitutional court. Selahattin Demirtaş and Osman Kavala remain imprisoned, despite ECHR rulings demanding their release. Turkey and the European Union. Turkey's EU membership talks have been frozen since 2018. While the EU recognizes Turkey as a strategic partner, it continues to stress the need for democratic reforms, judicial independence, and respect for fundamental rights. Turkey hosts 3 million Syrian refugees. In return, the EU has provided over 10 billion euros in aid. This refugee issue remains a bargaining chip in Turkey's relation with Europe. A surprising development came from Germany this year. A new law allowing dual citizenship for Turkish residents was introduced. Yet out of 600,000 eligible individuals, 585,000 chose not to apply for Turkish passports. Freedom of press and expression. Freedom of the press continued to decline in 2024. Turkey ranked 158 out of 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index. Dozens of journalists remain in prison. Hundreds more were detained throughout the year, often released under judicial control, a method used to restrict movement and silence dissent. New regulations like the Foreign Influence Agent Law allow the government to label critics as acting on behalf of foreign powers. Social media posts have become a common excuse for persecution. Violence and social rights. Violence against women continued to rise in 2024. Despite public outrage, no effective policies were introduced. Discrimination against LGBTQ+ individuals worsened. Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention in 2021 remains a key point of criticism. Geopolitics and Erdogan's strategy. On the international stage, President Erdogan continued his balancing act. Turkey maintained close ties with Russia, refusing to join Western sanctions after the Ukraine war. In September, Turkey applied to join BRICS, signaling its shift toward non-Western alliances. At the same time, Erdogan criticized Israel for its attacks on Gaza and Lebanon. However, Turkey didn't cut trade ties with Israel. Instead, trade continued through indirect channels, leading to backlash from Erdogan's own supporters. The government's harsh response to protests showed its domestic priorities. By promoting himself as a strong regional leader, Erdogan sought to distract from economic and social crises at home. Looking ahead to 2025, Turkey enters 2025 facing significant challenges. Economic instability remains a top concern. Democratic backsliding continues, with the judiciary and media under tight control. The refugee issue will remain a key topic in Turkey's relations with Europe. And Erdogan's strategy relies on portraying himself as an indispensable leader, both at home and abroad. But the world is changing, and all strategies may not work as before. Turkey's leadership faces a choice: continue down the current path or acknowledge the growing need for change. What will 2025 bring? Deeper crisis or a turning point? Only time will tell. For now, I thank you for joining me week after week to follow Turkey's story. This was Tarık Toros with What's Happening in Turkey. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See you in 2025.